when my son Fred rolled his eyes and called me a gullible old woman for talking to the homeless lady on the corner, I didn't argue. I just smiled and stirred my tea. He thought I was weak, but what he didn't know was that my gullible habit was about to be the only thing standing between me and a violent death. Before I tell you how, I have a quick question. Where are you listening from today? Drop your city in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button. Let me back up and tell you how a cheap prepaid phone and a woman with dirty fingernails became the most important relationship of my 68-year life. My name is Tina Shepard, and if you saw me walking down University Avenue in Palo Alto, you wouldn't look twice. I'm 68 years old. I wear comfortable shoes, I dye my hair to hide the gray, and I live in a house that is far too big for one person. They say that silence is golden, but let me tell you, that is a lie people tell themselves when they are lonely. In my house, silence isn't golden. It is heavy. It sits on the furniture like dust. Since my husband Arthur passed away 4 years ago, the silence has been my only constant roommate. My son, Fred, lives 20 minutes away, but he might as well be on the moon. He's busy. That's what he always says. Mom, I'm busy. Mom, work is crazy. So I stopped calling. I didn't want to be a burden. I learned to live with the quiet. I built a routine. Structure is the only thing that keeps you sane when you wake up alone every day. Coffee at 7 a.m. 1 sugar, a splash of cream. I drink it standing at the kitchen island because sitting at the dining table just highlights the empty chair across from me. Then I get dressed. I put on my coat, check my purse, and I walk. My doctor says walking is good for my heart. I think it's good for my soul because it gets me out of that house. My destination is usually the clinic for my checkups or the pharmacy, but the highlight of my morning isn't the destination. It's the corner of 4th and Main. That's where Jessie sits. You know the type. People walk past her like she is invisible. They look at their phones. They look at the traffic. They look anywhere but at her eyes. But I saw her. I saw her 3 months ago, shivering in a thin denim jacket, trying to wrap herself around a cup of cold coffee. She didn't ask me for money. She just looked up and smiled, a real smile, not a beggar's grimace, and said, "Good morning, ma'am. I love your scarf." That was it. That was all it took. She wasn't an addict. You can tell. I've lived long enough to know the look of chemical hunger. Jessie was just broken. She was about 35, the same age my daughter would have been if I hadn't miscarried all those years ago. She had clear eyes and dirty fingernails. Life had knocked her down, and she was having a hard time getting back up. So it became our ritual. Every morning, I stopped. I gave her $5, sometimes 10 if I had it. But more importantly, I gave her 5 minutes. We talked. I learned she used to be a teacher's aide before her landlord sold her building, and her car broke down, starting the domino effect that lands you on a piece of cardboard on 4th Street. This morning was different, though. The air was crisp, typical Northern California chill. When I turned the corner, Jessie wasn't sitting on her cardboard. She was standing up. She was pacing. As I got closer, I noticed she looked different. Her face was scrubbed clean. Her hair, usually pulled back in a messy knot, was brushed. She was wearing a white blouse that was slightly wrinkled but clean. "Tina," she waved. She actually called me by my name. I insisted on it weeks ago. Mrs. Shepard made me feel old. "Jessie," I said, stopping in front of her. "You look nice. Do you have somewhere to be?" She nodded, and I saw a spark in her eyes I hadn't seen before. Hope. It's a dangerous thing to have when you're on the street, but it looked beautiful on her. "I have an interview," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper like she was afraid to jinx it. "A cleaning service. They do high-end offices downtown. The manager said if I can come in at 10 a.m., he'll give me a shot." "That's wonderful." I reached into my purse to grab my usual $5, thinking maybe she needed bus fare. But Jessie didn't take the money. Her shoulders slumped. The light in her eyes flickered out. "It's not wonderful, Tina. I can't go." "Why not?" I asked. "It's a job. It's a way out." She looked down at her shoes. One lace was broken. "He requires a callback number. He said he needs to call to confirm the location, and he needs a character reference. A past employer. A landlord. Someone to say, 'I'm not going to steal the computers.'" She laughed, a bitter, dry sound. "Who am I going to give him? The guy who evicted me? I don't have a phone, Tina. I sold mine 2 months ago for food. Even if I go to the interview, the moment he asks for a number and I say I don't have one, he'll know I'm homeless. And nobody hires the homeless to clean their expensive offices." My heart broke for her. It was the classic trap. You need a job to get a phone, but you need a phone to get a job. I looked at her, standing there in her best attempt at professional clothes. I saw the desperation. I saw a woman who just wanted a chance to work, to pay taxes, to be normal again. And then I thought about my purse. I carried a bulky leather handbag. Inside, buried under tissues and receipts, was a cheap, prepaid smartphone. My son, Fred, had bought it for me a year ago. "It's an emergency phone, Mom," he had said. "Keep it charged. If you fall or get lost, use it." I hated the thing. I had my regular iPhone. This plastic brick was just another reminder that my son thought I was senile and fragile. It had been sitting in my bag, fully charged and used for 6 months. It still had about 300 minutes on it. I didn't think. I just acted. I reached into my bag and pulled out the black plastic phone. I pressed the side button. The screen lit up. "Here," I said, holding it out to her. Jessie stared at it like I was handing her a gold bar. "Tina, I can't. I can't take your phone." "It's a spare," I lied. Well, it was a half lie. "I never use it. It's got minutes on it." "Take it." She hesitated, her hands trembling. "But what about the reference? I still don't have anyone to vouch for me." I grabbed a pen from my purse and a scrap of paper, an old grocery receipt. I wrote down the number of the phone I was holding, and then I wrote down my own personal cell number below it. "You give him this phone number," I said, pointing to the plastic phone. "That way he can call you to tell you where to go. And for the reference, you give him my name, Tina Shepherd." Jessie looked at me, her eyes filling with tears. "You do that? You tell a stranger I'm trustworthy?" "Are you?" I asked, looking her dead in the eye. "Yes," she whispered. "I swear." "Then I'm not lying," I said. "If he calls, I'll tell him you worked for me. I'll tell him you're hardworking, honest, and reliable, because you are." I pressed the phone into her hand. It felt warm from being in my bag. "Go get that job, Jessie. Call me later and tell me how it went. My number is on that paper too." She didn't say thank you. She couldn't. She just grabbed my hand and squeezed it so hard my rings dug into my fingers. It was the first human touch I had felt in weeks. "Go," I said, smiling. "Don't be late." She turned and practically ran down the street toward the bus stop. I watched her go, feeling a warmth spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the coffee. For the first time in 4 years, I didn't feel like a lonely old widow taking up space. I felt useful. I felt like I had purpose. I finished my walk to the doctor's office with a lighter step. I didn't know it then, but that cheap plastic phone was the most important thing I had ever given anyone. I thought I was just helping a woman get a job. I didn't know I was handing her the weapon she would use to save my life. I walked into the medical building, greeted the receptionist, and sat in the waiting room. I picked up a magazine, humming a little tune. I felt good. I felt safe. I felt like the world was finally turning in the right direction. And then my own phone buzzed in my pocket. The waiting room at Dr. Evans' office always smelled like antiseptic and old magazines. It was a smell I used to hate, but today, it didn't bother me. I sat there, smoothing down my skirt, feeling a sense of accomplishment. Dr. Evans had just given me the news. "Tina," he'd said, taking off his glasses, "your blood pressure is down, your heart sounds strong, and whatever you're doing, keep doing it. You're in better shape than most 40-year-olds. I see." I had walked out of that exam room feeling 10 feet tall. You have to understand, at my age, a doctor's appointment is usually a sentencing hearing. You go in expecting them to take something away, your salt, your sugar, your driver's license. But not today. Today, I was validated. I was independent. I wasn't a burden to anyone. I didn't need a nurse. I didn't need a walker. And I certainly didn't need to move into that assisted living facility my son Fred had subtly mentioned last Thanksgiving. I sat down in the lobby to button my coat, taking my time. I pulled out my iPhone to check the time. 10:15 a.m. I had the whole day ahead of me. Maybe I'd stop at the market. Maybe I'd treat myself to a nice lunch. That's when it happened. My phone buzzed in my hand. Not a ring, just a short, sharp vibration. I looked at the screen. It was a text message. The number wasn't saved in my contacts, but I recognized it instantly. It was the number of the prepaid phone I had just given to Jessie less than an hour ago. I smiled. She must be texting to say she got to the interview, or maybe she was asking for directions. I swiped the screen to open the message, already thinking of what encouraging words I would type back. But the smile fell off my face the second I read the words. "Mrs. Tina, please don't go home yet. I saw your son go in. He's not alone. They brought bags." I stared at the phone. I blinked, sure that my reading glasses were playing tricks on me. I read it again. "Mrs. Tina, please don't go home yet. I saw your son go in. He's not alone. They brought bags." The noise of the waiting room, the receptionist typing, the TV playing low in the corner, a baby crying, all of it just faded away. All I could hear was the rushing of blood in my ears. My son? Fred. It didn't make sense. Fred lived 20 minutes away in Mountain View. He worked at a tech startup that demanded 80 hours a week. He hadn't been to my house in 3 weeks, and when he did visit, it was always a scheduled affair. He would call 3 days in advance. "Mom, I'm coming for dinner. Don't cook anything spicy." He never just dropped by, and he certainly never came by on a Tuesday morning when he should be at work. And what did she mean he's not alone? My first instinct, the instinct of a mother who had loved her boy for 42 years, was to dismiss it. Jessie was confused. She had to be. Maybe she saw a neighbor who looked like Fred. Maybe it was a delivery driver. Fred wouldn't be at my house without telling me. He had a key, yes, for emergencies, but he respected my privacy. He respected me. I typed back, my fingers shaking just a little. "Are you sure it's him? He's supposed to be at work." I watched the 3 little dots appear on the screen immediately. She was typing. "It's him. He's driving the silver Tesla. He's with a man I don't know. Big guy. Leather jacket. They didn't knock, Mrs. Tina. Fred used his key, but they looked around the street first, like they were checking if anyone was watching." A cold stone settled in my stomach. Fred did drive a silver Tesla. They brought bags. She had said, "Why would my son bring empty bags to my house?" Panic started to rise in my throat, hot and sour. The independence I had felt 5 minutes ago evaporated. Suddenly, I felt very small and very old. My house was my sanctuary. It was the one place where I felt safe, where I was surrounded by the memories of my husband, Arthur. It was where I slept. It was where I kept my jewelry, my papers, my life. And now, strangers were inside. They looked around the street first. That sentence terrified me more than anything else. An innocent son visiting his mother doesn't check the street to see if he's being watched. A son coming to borrow some sugar or check on the furnace doesn't bring a strange man in a leather jacket. Criminals do that. My mind raced. Was Fred in trouble? Was he being coerced? And this thought hurt so much I almost dropped the phone. Was he doing this to me? I thought about our last conversation. He had asked about money. Again, he had made a joke about how big the house was for one person, how much it was worth in this market. You're sitting on a gold mine, Mom, he had said. I had laughed it off. I looked around the waiting room. The receptionist was laughing at something on her computer screen. A young mother was bouncing her baby. The world was normal. Everything was fine, except my world was collapsing. I wanted to run. I wanted to rush out to my car, drive home, and march through that front door. I wanted to demand to know what was going on. I wanted to be the mother, the authority figure. But then another text came through. Please wait. Do not come home. I'm watching from the corner. They are still inside. I'm scared for you. I'm scared for you. A homeless woman who had nothing, who had been shivering on a sidewalk an hour ago, was scared for me. I took a deep breath. My husband, Arthur, used to say I had a gut instinct that was never wrong. Tina's radar, he called it. And right now, my radar was screaming. It wasn't screaming that my son was there to surprise me with a gift. It was screaming that something was wrong. Something was dangerous. I typed one last message to Jesse. Keep watching. Tell me if they leave. I put the phone in my pocket and sat back down in the hard plastic chair. I couldn't go home. Not yet. I had to sit here in this waiting room while my son and a stranger to God knows what in the home I had built with his father. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in my life, I was terrified of my own child. I sat in my car for 60 minutes. 60 minutes is a lifetime when your heart is beating like a trapped bird against your ribs. I watched the clock on the dashboard tick. 10:30, 10:45, 11 o'clock. Every car that drove past made me jump. Every phone notification made me flinch. Finally, at 11:15, Jesse texted me. Just 2 words. They left. I didn't text back. I put the car in gear and drove. I drove too fast. I blew through a yellow light on Alma Street, something I never do. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white. I wasn't driving home to relax. I was driving to a crime scene. When I turned onto my street, I held my breath. My neighborhood is quiet. It's the kind of place where people trim their hedges on Saturdays and wave when they get the mail. It looked exactly the same as it had when I left 3 hours ago. The sun was shining on the pavement. Mrs. Higgins next door was watering her roses. And my driveway was empty. The silver Tesla was gone. I pulled in and turned off the engine. Silence. Just the ticking of the cooling metal. I sat there for a moment, staring at my front door. It looked so normal. The wreath I had put up for spring was still hanging straight. The doormat that said, "Welcome," was still centered. If I hadn't received that text, I would have walked inside humming. I would have put the kettle on. I would have gone about my day, completely ignorant that my sanctuary had been violated. I got out of the car. My legs felt heavy, like I was walking through water. I unlocked the front door. My hand shook, scratching the key against the lock before it finally turned. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The first thing that hit me wasn't a sight. It was a smell. My house has always smelled like lemon polish and lavender. I'm proud of that. I keep a clean home. Arthur used to tease me that you could eat dinner off the floorboards. But today, underneath the lavender, there was something else. acrid, stale, dirty, cigarette smoke. It was faint, like someone had smoked outside, and then walked in with the stench clinging to their clothes. But it was there. It hung in the entryway like a ghost. My son, Fred, hates smoking. He's a health nut. He drinks green smoothies and runs marathons. He lectures me if I eat too much red meat. He would never allow a cigarette near him. He's not alone, Jessie had said. Big guy, leather jacket. A stranger had been in my house. A stranger who smelled like cheap tobacco had walked on my rugs, breathed my air, and stood in my hallway. I didn't take off my coat. I didn't put down my purse. I walked straight into the living room. Everything looked undisturbed. The television was still mounted on the wall. The silverware chest on the sidebar hadn't been touched. My laptop was sitting on the coffee table, right where I left it. A common thief would have taken those. They are easy money, quick to sell. But Fred wasn't a common thief. He knew where the real value was, and he knew what I wouldn't notice immediately. I walked past the expensive electronics. I walked past the antique vase. I went straight to the fireplace mantel in the den. This was Arthur's room. Even 4 years later, I kept it mostly the way he left it. His books were on the shelves. His favorite leather chair was in the corner, and on the mantel, right next to our wedding photo, was a small navy blue velvet box. It was the box for his vintage Rolex. Arthur bought that watch in 1985 with his first big bonus. He wore it every single day. He wore it when he taught Fred to ride a bike. He wore it when he walked me down the aisle at our 25th anniversary renewal. He was wearing it in the hospital bed when he took his last breath. I had taken it off his wrist myself. I had cleaned it, wound it, and put it in that box. I wound it every Sunday morning just to keep the heart of it beating. It wasn't just a watch. It was a promise. I was saving it for Fred's 50th birthday. I wanted to give it to him when he was a little older, a little more settled. I wanted to say, "Your father is always with you." I reached for the box. It was light, too light. My stomach dropped to the floor. I opened the lid. Empty. The little white pillow inside was pristine, but the gold and steel band was gone. I stared at the empty space. A sound escaped my throat, a whimper like a wounded animal. I didn't care about the money. That watch was worth thousands, yes, but that didn't matter. You can replace a TV. You can replace a laptop. You cannot replace the object that felt the pulse of the man you loved for 30 years. Fred knew that. He knew. He didn't just stumble in here and grab something random because he needed cash. He came here to his father's room, and he chose the one thing that would hurt me the most. He chose the legacy. I snapped the box shut. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet room. I looked around the den. Had he sat in his father's chair? Had he laughed with his smoking friend while he shoved his inheritance into his pocket? I felt sick, physically sick. I grabbed the edge of the mantel to steady myself. The betrayal was a physical weight, pressing down on my chest. Jessie was right. They brought bags. I looked around. What else? What else had he taken? I ran upstairs to my bedroom. I checked my jewelry box. My diamond earrings, gone. The emergency cash I kept in the bottom drawer, gone. But none of it hurt like the watch. I sat down on the edge of my bed. I felt cold. I wrapped my arms around myself, rocking back and forth. This wasn't a burglary. A burglary is random. A burglary is impersonal. This was personal. My own son had violated the sanctity of my home. He had looked at his father's memory and seen a pawn shop ticket. I looked at the phone in my hand. Jessie's text was still on the screen. "I'm scared for you." I wasn't scared anymore. The fear had burned away in the car. What I felt now was a deep, hollow ache where my mother's heart used to be. My phone rang. The screen lit up with a photo of Fred smiling at a barbecue 3 years ago. Fred Mobile. I stared at his smiling face. He looked so innocent in the picture, so much like Arthur. My thumb hovered over the decline button. I didn't want to talk to him. I didn't want to hear his voice. But then I looked at the empty spot on the dresser where my earrings used to be. I thought about the smoke smell downstairs. I took a deep breath. I wiped the tears from my cheeks. I sat up straight. I answered the phone. Hello. My voice sounded strange. Brittle. Like dry leaves. Hey, Mom. Fred's voice was cheerful. Too cheerful. Just calling to check in. How was the doctor? He was acting normal. He was pretending nothing happened. He was standing on the ashes of my trust and asking about my blood pressure. I gripped the phone tighter. The doctor was fine. Fred, I said. But something strange happened when I got home. Oh, he said. What's that? The casualness of it made me want to scream. But I didn't scream. I needed to hear him say it. I needed to hear him lie to me. Your father's watch, I said, my voice trembling. It's gone. There was a silence on the other end of the line. It wasn't the silence of shock. It was the silence of calculation. I could almost hear the gears turning in Fred's head, deciding which version of the truth or which lie he was going to feed me. Gone, he repeated finally. His voice was calm. Too calm. What do you mean, gone? Did you drop it? It's not on the floor, Fred, I said, gripping the phone so hard my fingers ached. The box is empty. The velvet pillow is there, but the watch is gone. And the house smells like smoke. I waited. I waited for him to say, "Oh no, Mom, call the police," or "I'm coming over right now." Instead, he let out a long, heavy sigh, the kind of sigh you give a toddler who just spilled milk for the third time. "Mom," he said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming slow and deliberate. "Are you sure you didn't move it? Remember last week? You called me in a panic because you couldn't find your reading glasses. You swore someone stole them. And where were they?" I felt a flush of heat rise up my neck. "They were on top of the fridge," I whispered. "Exactly," Fred said. "On top of the fridge. A place you never put them. You were so worked up then, too. You were talking about changing the locks." "This is different," I insisted, but my voice lacked the steel it had a moment ago. "I didn't move Arthur's watch. I never move it. It stays in the box on the mantel. That is where it lives." "Mom, listen to yourself," he said. "You sound frazzled. You've been under a lot of stress lately. The anniversary was last month. I know how hard that hits you. Sometimes when we're stressed, our minds play tricks on us. We do things and forget we did them 5 minutes later." "I did not imagine the smell of cigarette smoke," I said, trying to regain my footing. "And I did not imagine that your car was here." "My car?" Fred laughed. It was a short, sharp bark of a laugh. "Mom, I'm at work. I've been at my desk since 8 this morning. Ask my assistant. I haven't left the building. Why would I be at your house?" Someone saw you," I stammered. I didn't want to mention Jesse. He would tear that apart. "You're trusting a homeless woman over your own son?" I could hear him saying it. "Who saw me?" Fred challenged. "Mrs. Higgins next door? She's legally blind without her cataracts fixed, Mom. Or was it that mailman you think is spying on you?" "I don't think the mailman is spying on me," I said weakly. "You mentioned it last Thanksgiving," he countered. "You said he lingers too long. See, this is what I'm talking about. Paranoia. Confusion. It's part of aging, Mom, and it's nothing to be ashamed of, but we have to be realistic." He was doing it. He was twisting the world. He was taking my reality, a reality where I was a victim of a crime, and turning it into a medical symptom. He was using my age as a weapon to disarm me. I know what I saw, I said, but even as I said it, I looked at the empty box. Did I move it? Did I take it out to clean it yesterday and forget? No. I remembered winding it on Sunday. I remembered putting it back. Didn't I? Look, Mom, Fred said, his voice softening into that patronizing, syrupy tone that made my skin crawl. I love you. You know that. But I've been worried about you. Living in that big house all alone, it's a lot to manage. Maybe it's becoming too much. Maybe this missing watch is just a sign that you're overwhelmed. My heart hammered in my chest. This was the conversation I had been dreading for 2 years. The "it's time to move" conversation. The "you're not capable anymore" conversation. I am perfectly capable, I said, my voice shaking. Are you? He asked gently. You're losing expensive heirlooms. You're smelling smoke that isn't there. You're accusing your son, your only son who pays your phone bill, by the way, of sneaking around. Does that sound like a capable person to you? Tears pricked my eyes. Not tears of sadness, but tears of frustration. I felt trapped. If I argued, I looked hysterical. If I agreed, I admitted defeat. I'm not crazy, Fred, I whispered. I never said you were crazy, he soothed. I said you're aging. It happens to everyone. Look, why don't you go lie down? Take a nap. When you wake up, check the drawer in the bathroom. Or the pocket of your winter coat. I bet you $10 the watch is there. And if it's not, we'll look for it together when I come over this weekend. Okay? But I have to go, Mom. I have a meeting in 5 minutes. Try to relax. Drink some tea. And please stop inventing mysteries. It's not good for your heart. Fred, wait. Click. The line went dead. I pulled the phone away from my ear and stared at it. Stop inventing mysteries. I sat there on the edge of the bed, the silence of the house pressing in on me. I looked at the empty velvet box. Doubt is a terrible thing. It's like a drop of ink in a glass of water. It spreads until you can't see clearly anymore. Maybe he was right. I was 68. I did lose my glasses last week. And that smell, I sniffed the air. The smoke smell was fainter now. Had it ever been there? Or had I smelled a car passing by outside? And my brain constructed a narrative to fit the text message. The text message. I grabbed the other phone, the cheap black one, out of my pocket. I read Jesse's message again. I saw your son go in. He's not alone. Jesse saw him. Jesse knew him. But Fred sounded so sure. He offered to let me speak to his assistant. He was at work. Why would he lie? Why would he steal the watch? He was my son. I changed his diapers. I paid for his college. He had a good job. He didn't need money. Maybe Jesse was lying. Why did I trust a stranger on the street more than my own flesh and blood? Maybe Jessie was playing a game. Maybe she wanted me to leave the house so she could break in. My head started to spin. I felt dizzy. I lay back on the pillows, closing my eyes. You're losing things again. You're getting older, Mom. The words echoed in my head. I felt a sob build in my chest. It is a terrifying feeling to not trust your own mind. It is the ultimate betrayal of the self. If I couldn't trust my memory, what did I have left? I rolled over and buried my face in the pillow that still smelled faintly of the detergent Arthur liked. I felt small. I felt foolish. I felt like an old woman who had made a scene over nothing. Fred was right. I should just sleep. I should just close my eyes and let the world fade away. Maybe when I woke up, the watch would be in the bathroom drawer. Maybe the text message was a wrong number. Maybe my life could go back to being quiet and simple. I was drifting, the exhaustion of the adrenaline crash pulling me under. But then the black phone buzzed against my leg. It buzzed once, twice, 3 times. Persistent. Angry. I ignored it for a moment. I didn't want to read any more lies. I didn't want to participate in this drama anymore. But it buzzed again. A long, sustained vibration. I groaned and sat up. I picked up the phone. It wasn't a text this time. It was a picture message. My thumb hovered over the open button. I was afraid of what I would see. I was afraid it would be nothing, a blurry photo of a tree proving Jessie was crazy. Or worse, a photo of my empty driveway, proving I was crazy. I pressed the button. The image loaded slowly, pixel by pixel. It was a photo taken from across the street. It was grainy, and the lighting was bad, but the subject was undeniable. It was my front door. It was open, and standing in the doorway, clear as day, was Fred. He wasn't wearing his work suit. He was wearing jeans and a black hoodie, and he wasn't alone. Standing next to him, holding a large duffel bag, was a man I had never seen before. A man with a shaved head and a leather jacket. But that wasn't the part that made my blood turn to ice. It was what Fred was holding in his hand. In his right hand, glinting in the sunlight, was a gold and steel watch. He was looking at it, and he was smiling. I dropped the phone on the bed. The gaslighting shattered. The doubt evaporated. The ink cleared from the water. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't senile. I wasn't old and confused. My son had looked me in the eye, or ear, and lied to me. He had used my deepest insecurity, my fear of aging, to cover his crime. He had tried to make me believe I was losing my mind, so he could steal my husband's legacy. I stood up. The dizziness was gone. The tears were gone. In their place was something else, something hot and fierce. I am not imagining things, Fred, I said to the empty room. My voice was steady, and I am not going to take a nap. I picked up the phone and texted Jessie back. I see it. What do I do? I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at that small screen until my eyes burned. The photo was grainy, the kind of low-quality image you get from a cheap prepaid phone, but to me, it was clearer than high definition. It was proof. There was my son, Fred, the boy I had nursed through chickenpox, the teenager I had taught to drive in a church parking lot, the man who had just told me I was senile and imagining things. He was standing there, in black and white, holding his father's watch like a trophy. And the man next to him, the stranger, he looked rough. He had a shaved head and shoulders that looked too wide for his leather jacket. He wasn't holding a bag of groceries or a toolbox. He was holding a black duffel bag that looked heavy. I didn't cry. You think you would cry when you realize your only child is a thief and a liar, but I didn't. The tears dried up instantly. In their place, a cold, hard rage settled in my chest. It was the same feeling I had 40 years ago when a stray dog tried to snap at Fred in the park. I wasn't a victim. I was a mother bear. But this time, the threat wasn't a dog. It was my son. I looked at the timestamp on the photo. 10:45 a.m. He had been here. He had lied. He had looked me in the ear and told me my brain was rotting just to cover his tracks. I texted Jessie back, my fingers flying across the keypad. I see it. What do I do? I waited. The little dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Stay inside for now, she wrote. I'm watching. I need to charge this phone. I'll text you if I see them again. I put the phone down. The sun was starting to dip below the horizon, casting long, stretching shadows across my bedroom floor. Usually, this was my favorite time of day. The golden hour, Arthur used to call it. But today, the shadows looked like fingers reaching for me. My house, my sanctuary, suddenly felt like a cage. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like a footstep. The wind rattling the window pane sounded like a key in the lock. I walked downstairs, turning on every light I passed. I wanted to banish the shadows. I went into the kitchen and checked the back door. Locked. I checked the windows. Locked. I found myself standing in front of the wall safe in the study. It was hidden behind a painting of the ocean Arthur had bought in Carmel. I moved the painting. The digital keypad stared back at me. Fred knew the code. Of course he did. We had put it in his name as the executor of the estate. I punched in the numbers. Beep, 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 beep. The heavy steel door swung open. I peered inside. My breath caught in my throat. The papers were there. The deeds. The passports. But the small metal box at the back, the one that held the emergency cash and Arthur's life insurance payout I had withdrawn in cashier's checks, was shifted. It was crooked. Someone had tried to open it. There were scratches around the lock, but they hadn't gotten in. The lock on the inner box was an old-fashioned key lock, and I kept that key on a chain around my neck. They had come for the money. They had taken the watch and the jewelry because they couldn't get the big prize. And that meant one thing. They weren't done. My phone buzzed again. It was loud in the quiet house. I jumped, my heart hammering against my ribs. I grabbed the black phone. It was Jessie. Mrs. Tina, get out. Now. My blood ran cold. Why? I typed. They are back, Jessie replied. They parked down the street. I can hear them. The window is down. They are arguing. I stared at the words. Arguing. What are they saying? I asked. The response took 10 seconds, but it felt like 10 years. The big guy is yelling at your son. He said, we didn't get the safe. You said she sleeps like the dead. We go back in tonight and finish it. If she wakes up, we handle it. If she wakes up, we handle it. The world stopped spinning. Handle it. That isn't a phrase you use for a problem. It's a phrase you use for a nuisance, for a loose end. My son was discussing me like I was a broken appliance. And the man with him, the man with the wide shoulders, he sounded like he didn't care if I was his mother or a stranger. I wasn't just a mother dealing with a rebellious son anymore. I was a 68-year-old woman alone in a big house, and there were predators parked down the street. I didn't think. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't go upstairs to get a coat. I operated on pure instinct. I grabbed my purse from the kitchen counter. I grabbed my car keys. I looked at the back door. If I went out the front, they would see me. They were parked down the street. They would see the garage door open. They would see my car headlights. I couldn't drive. Run, Jessie texted. Don't drive. They will follow. She was right. She was homeless. She lived on the street. She knew how predators worked better than I did. I slipped my feet into my gardening clogs by the back door. I unlocked the deadbolt as quietly as I could. Click. I opened the door and stepped out into the cool evening air. The backyard was dark. I didn't turn on the porch light. I moved through the darkness like a ghost. I climbed over the low fence that separated my yard from Mrs. Higgins' yard. I hadn't climbed a fence in 50 years, and my hips screamed in protest, but fear is a powerful painkiller. I landed in her flower bed, crushing some hydrangeas. I didn't care. I scrambled up her back porch steps and pounded on her sliding glass door. Martha! I hissed. Martha, open up. Inside, I saw the flicker of a TV. Martha Higgins was sitting in her recliner, watching Jeopardy. She looked up, startled, squinting at the darkness. Martha, it's Tina. She heaved herself out of the chair and unlocked the door. Tina, she asked, sliding the door open. Good heavens, what are you doing? You're wearing your house slippers. Is there a fire? I pushed past her into the living room and locked the door behind me. I pulled the curtains shut. Turn off the light, I said, my voice shaking. What? Turn off the light. Martha! Now. She flipped the switch, plunging the room into the gray glow of the television. "Tina, you're scaring me. What is going on?" I grabbed her shoulders. I was trembling now, the adrenaline starting to wear off, leaving me shaking like a leaf. "Fred," I whispered. "Fred is robbing me. He's coming back. Tonight. Right now." Martha's mouth fell open. "Fred, you're Fred? That nice boy who brings you flowers." "He's not a nice boy," I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "He's a thief, and he brought a man who wants to handle me." I pulled out the black phone. I showed her the picture. I showed her the texts. Martha squinted at the screen. She adjusted her glasses. Then she looked at me, and her face hardened. Martha was 72. She had buried 2 husbands and raised 4 sons. She knew trouble when she saw it. "That little rat," she hissed. She didn't ask if I was sure. She didn't tell me I was imagining things. She believed me. She went to her kitchen counter and picked up her landline. She held it out to me. "Call them," she said. "Don't call the non-emergency line. Call 911. I took the phone. It felt heavy in my hand. Calling the police on your own child, it feels like a violation of nature. It goes against every biological instinct you have. You are supposed to protect them. You are supposed to shield them from the world. But Fred wasn't a child anymore, and he wasn't protecting me. I looked at the black phone one last time. I looked at Jessie's text. "If she wakes up, we handle it." Jessie, a stranger, had done more to protect me today than my own blood. I dialed 911. 911, what is your emergency?" I took a deep breath. I stood up straighter. I wasn't the confused old Lady Fred wanted me to be. I was Tina Shepherd, and I was done being a victim. "My name is Tina Shepherd," I said clearly. "I am at 405 Elm Street. My house is next door at 407. There is a burglary in progress. The intruders are armed, and they are dangerous. Are you safe, ma'am?" "I am for now," I said, watching my dark house through Martha's curtains. "But they are breaking in right now." The next 20 minutes were the longest of my life. Martha and I stood behind her heavy velvet drapes, peering through a crack no wider than a finger. Her living room was dark, smelling of potpourri and old paper. My heart was beating so hard I thought it would crack a rib. "Do you see anything?" Martha whispered. She was gripping a ceramic cat figurine, like a weapon. "Not yet," I said. My eyes were glued to the street. It was fully dark now. The streetlights cast pools of yellow light on the asphalt. My house sat across the lawn, dark and silent. It looked so peaceful. It looked like a home where a grandmother would bake cookies, not a crime scene waiting to happen. Then I saw it. A vehicle turned onto the street. It wasn't Fred's silver Tesla. It was a black cargo van. It moved slowly, prowling. The headlights were off. "That's them," I whispered. My throat went dry. The van pulled up right in front of my driveway. It didn't park perfectly. It sat at an angle, ready to speed off. The engine cut, but the lights stayed off. 2 doors opened. 2 figures stepped out. Even in the darkness, I knew him. You know your own child's walk. I recognized the slope of his shoulders, the way he tucked his chin. It was Fred. He was wearing that black hoodie, hood up like a teenager up to no good. The man next to him was the one from the photo. The leather jacket. He was big. He moved with a heavy, aggressive grace. They didn't look around this time. They walked straight to my front door. I watched, holding my breath, as Fred reached into his pocket. I saw the glint of metal in the street light. My key, the key I had given him when he was 25, saying, "You always have a home here." He slid it into the lock. He was opening the door for the man who wanted to handle me. "Where are they?" Martha hissed. You called them 10 minutes ago. They're coming, I said, though a cold dread was starting to pool in my stomach. What if they were late? What if Fred got inside and realized I was gone? What if they came looking for me? Fred pushed the door open. The two men stepped into my foyer. And then the world exploded with light. It didn't come from my house. It came from the street. 3 police cruisers had rolled up silently, lights off, coasting on momentum. I hadn't even seen them approach from the other end of the block. Suddenly, their floodlights blinded the night. Blue and red strobes fractured the darkness, bouncing off the houses, the trees, the black van. Police, show me your hands. Get on the ground. Now, the voice was amplified, booming through the quiet neighborhood. I watched my front door. Fred stumbled back out onto the porch, shielding his eyes against the glare. He looked terrified. He looked small. The big man in the leather jacket didn't come out. Driver is on the porch. Suspect 2 inside, the officer yelled. Officers with drawn weapons swarmed my lawn. They moved fast, low to the ground. They were stepping on my hydrangeas, but I didn't care. It's my house. I heard Fred scream. His voice was high and cracking. I live here. It's my mother's house. You can't do this. On the ground. Face down. 2 officers grabbed Fred. They didn't ask him nicely. They spun him around and forced him onto the concrete of my porch. I saw his face press against the welcome mat, the one I had bought at Target last week. I flinched. It's instinct. You don't want to see your baby hurt. But then I remembered the empty watch box. I remembered the smoke. I have a key. Fred was screaming into the concrete. Check the key. I'm allowed to be here. The officers ignored him. They cuffed his hands behind his back. Then, the front door opened again. The big man walked out. He wasn't screaming. He had his hands up. He knew the drill. He walked out slowly, knelt down, and let them cuff him. He looked bored. This wasn't his first time. They got them. Martha breathed. She dropped the ceramic cat. Tina, they got them. I let out a breath I had been holding for hours. My knees buckled, and I had to grab the windowsill to stay upright. I have to go out there, I said. Tina, no, Martha said, stay here. I have to, I said. They need to know it's my house. And I need him to see me. I unlocked Martha's front door and stepped out. The air was filled with the crackle of police radios and the hum of engines. I walked across the lawn. The grass was wet with dew. My slippers were soaked instantly. A female officer saw me coming and held up a hand. Ma'am, stay back. This is an active crime scene. I'm Tina Shepherd, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I'm the homeowner. I called you. The officer's face softened. She lowered her hand. Mrs. Shepherd, are you okay? I'm fine, I said. I looked past her, toward the porch. They were pulling Fred up to his feet. He looked disheveled. His hoodie was twisted. There was dirt on his cheek. He saw me. His eyes went wide. For a second, I saw relief. Then I saw the mask slip back into place. The gaslighting mask. Mom, he shouted, straining against the officer's grip. Mom, tell them this is a mistake. I was just checking on the house. I saw a van, and I came to check on you. He was lying. Even in handcuffs, with the police surrounding him, he was lying. I walked closer. I stopped at the edge of the driveway, 10 feet from him. You have a key, Fred, I said. Why did you need to check on the house with a stranger? He's a security consultant. Fred yelled. I hired him to install an alarm because I was worried about you. Mom, please, these guys are hurting me. The audacity took my breath away. He was still doing it. He thought I was stupid. He thought he could spin this. Security consultants don't park in the dark, I said quietly. and they don't hide in the bushes. I looked at the black van. The back doors were open now. An officer was shining a flashlight inside. "Mrs. Shepherd," the officer called out, "is this yours?" I walked over to the van. I peered inside. It wasn't empty bags this time. The floor of the van was lined with plastic sheeting. There were tools, heavy tools, a sledgehammer, a crowbar, and something that looked like a blowtorch. And in the corner, there was a roll of duct tape and a pack of zip ties. My stomach turned over. "What is that?" I asked, pointing to the tape. The officer looked at me grimly. "That's a restraint kit, ma'am. Burglars use it if they expect the homeowner to be present, to keep them quiet." I looked at the zip ties. They were long, thick plastic. If she wakes up, we handle it. They weren't just going to rob me. They were going to tie me up. They were going to tape my mouth shut. They were going to terrorize me in my own bed until I gave them the combination to the safe. And my son knew. He was driving the getaway car. I turned back to Fred. He wasn't yelling anymore. He had seen me look in the van. He saw the realization on my face. He went pale. "Mom," he whispered, "it's not what it looks like. I didn't know he had that stuff. I just owe him some money. I just needed to open the safe." "You were going to let him tie me up," I said. It wasn't a question. "No, I told him not to hurt you. I said, you said, if she wakes up, we handle it." I cut him off. Fred froze. How did you know that?" I reached into my pocket and pulled out the cheap black phone. "I have friends, Fred," I said. "Friends who actually watch out for me. Friends who don't need my money to care if I live or die." The officer nudged Fred forward. "Let's go. You have the right to remain silent." Fred looked at me one last time. He looked like a little boy who had broken a window, expecting his mother to fix it, expecting me to wave a checkbook and make the bad men go away. "Mom," he pleaded. "Mom, don't let them take me." I looked at the zip ties in the van. I looked at the dark windows of my house where I had raised him. I looked at the man who had stolen his father's watch and tried to steal my dignity. I turned my back on him. "Officer," I said to the woman next to me, "I'd like to make a full statement." As they shoved Fred into the back of the cruiser, he started screaming my name, but I didn't turn around. I watched the black van being towed away. I was alive. I was safe. And for the first time in my life, I was completely, utterly done being a victim. The coffee at the police station was cold and tasted like burnt rubber. I held the styrofoam cup with both hands just to stop them from shaking. I was sitting in a small room with fluorescent lights that hummed like a headache. Detective Miller sat across from me. He looked tired. He was a man who had seen too many bad things. And tonight, I was just another one of them. "We have a confession, Mrs. Shepherd," he said quietly. I didn't look up. I was staring at a scratch on the metal table. "Tell me." "It wasn't a random burglary," he began, opening a file. "Your son, Fred, has a gambling problem. A severe one. He owes nearly $80,000 to an illegal sports betting ring in Oakland. $80,000. I closed my eyes. I thought about Fred's busy work schedule. I thought about how he never had time to come for Sunday dinner. He wasn't working. He was gambling. He was throwing away his life while I sat at home knitting scarves for grandchildren I would never have. The man with him," Miller continued, "is an enforcer for the loan sharks. His name is Marcus. He gave Fred a deadline. Pay up by midnight tonight, or they would break his legs. Literally. So he brought him to me." I whispered. "Fred told them you had a wall safe," Miller said. "He told them about the life insurance payout from your husband. He told them it was cash and bearer bonds. He promised Marcus that if he helped him crack the safe, the debt would be wiped clean." And the zip ties? I asked. The image of that plastic bag in the van was burned into my retinas. Miller sighed. He took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. Fred claims he didn't know about them. He claims the plan was to sneak in while you were asleep, crack the safe, and leave. He told Marcus you were a heavy sleeper. He said, Mom won't hear a thing. It'll be easy. But Marcus brought insurance. I said, yes. Marcus told us that if you woke up, they were going to tie you up until they got the combination. He said Fred didn't argue when he saw the tape. Fred didn't argue. My son, the boy who used to cry when he stepped on a snail, was willing to let a thug tape my mouth shut just to save his own knees. Can I see him? I asked. Miller hesitated. You don't have to, Mrs. Shepherd. We have enough for an indictment without it. I need to see him, I said. I need to hear him say it. They brought Fred in 10 minutes later. He wasn't wearing handcuffs anymore, but one wrist was shackled to the table. He looked terrible. His face was pale, sweating. He looked like a man coming down from a high. When he saw me, he started crying immediately. Not silent tears, ugly, heaving sobs. Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I messed up. I sat down opposite him. I didn't reach out to hold his hand. I felt numb, like I was looking at a stranger wearing my son's face. $80,000, Fred? I asked. I can fix it, he blubbered. I had a system. I was going to win it back. I just needed a stake. I was going to pay you back, Mom. I swear. I would have put the money back in the safe before you even noticed. You stole your father's watch. I said, was that part of the system? He flinched. That was... Marcus took that. He saw it on the mantel and grabbed it. I tried to stop him. Liar, I said. It came out soft, but it hit him like a slap. I saw the picture. Fred, you were holding it. You were smiling. He stopped crying. The mask slipped again. He looked down at the table. I needed cash for the buy-in. He mumbled. It's just a watch, Mom. Dad's dead. He doesn't need it. I'm alive. I needed help. It's just a watch. That sentence severed the last thread connecting us. And when I called you, I asked. When I told you it was missing, you told me I was crazy. You told me I was losing my mind. You told me I was old and confused. He looked up, his eyes pleading. I was protecting you. I didn't want you to worry. I thought if you believed you lost it, you wouldn't call the police. I was trying to keep the police out of it so nobody got hurt. You weren't protecting me, I said, my voice rising for the first time. You were gaslighting me. You were making me doubt my own sanity just to cover your crime. You used my age against me. You used my trust against me. Mom, please. He leaned forward, rattling the chain. I'm your son. I'm Fred. You can't let them put me in jail. These guys, they'll kill me in there. You have to tell them it was a misunderstanding. Tell them I had permission to be in the house. Please, Mom. Do it for Dad. Do it for Dad. I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. I thought about Arthur. I thought about the man who worked 6 days a week to pay for Fred's college. I thought about the man who taught Fred to shake hands and look people in the eye. If Arthur were here, he wouldn't be bailing Fred out. He would be heartbroken. Your father, I said, looking down at him, was a man of honor. He didn't lie. He didn't steal from women. And he certainly didn't let strangers threaten his family. I walked to the door. Mom. Fred screamed. Mom, don't walk away. I'm your son. I stopped with my hand on the doorknob. I looked back at him. I remembered the text message. If she wakes up, we handle it. I don't have a son. I said, my son died the moment he decided his gambling debt was worth more than my life. I don't know who you are, but you are not the boy I raised. I opened the door and walked out. Fred's screams followed me down the hallway, muffled by the heavy steel door, until they faded into silence. Detective Miller was waiting in the corridor. He held out a clipboard. "Mrs. Shepherd," he said gently, "the district attorney needs to know. Do you want to press charges for the burglary and the theft?" I looked at the form. It was just a piece of paper. But signing it meant sending my only child to prison. It meant Christmas alone. It meant the end of the family line. Society tells mothers we must forgive everything. We must be martyrs. We must lay down on the train tracks so our children can walk over our backs. But society is wrong. Being a mother doesn't mean you accept abuse. It doesn't mean you let someone convince you that you're crazy. I took the pen. My hand didn't shake this time. "He tried to make me believe I was losing my mind," I said to the detective. "He tried to take my dignity before he took my money. That is not something a mother forgives." I signed my name, Tina Shepherd. I handed the clipboard back. "Lock him up," I said. I walked out of the station into the cool night air. It was midnight. The street was empty. I was alone, truly alone now. No husband, no son. But as I walked to my car, I took a deep breath. The air tasted sweet. It tasted like truth. I had lost my family, but I had kept myself. And as any woman my age will tell you, when the world tries to strip you of everything, keeping your sanity is the greatest victory of all. It has been 30 days since the police took my son away. 30 days of meetings with lawyers, 30 days of changing locks, and 30 days of learning how to breathe again. The silence in my house is different now. It used to feel heavy and lonely. Now it feels peaceful. It feels safe. I don't wait for the phone to ring anymore. I don't wait for a visit that never comes. I have realized that being alone is not the same as being lonely. Being alone means you are the queen of your own castle, and no one is allowed inside unless they respect the throne. Yesterday, I finally felt ready to resume my routine. I put on my coat. I made my coffee, and I walked. The air was crisp, just like it was on that Tuesday. But this time, I wasn't walking to the doctor. I was walking with a purpose. I turned the corner at 4th and Main. My heart fluttered a little. Would she still be there? Or had she moved on? She was there. Jessie was sitting on her usual piece of cardboard. She was wearing the same denim jacket, but she looked tired, defeated. When she saw me, her face lit up, but then it crumpled with guilt. "Tina," she said, scrambling to her feet. I'm so sorry. I missed the interview. I stayed to watch the house like you asked, and by the time the police came, the office was closed. I didn't get the job." She was apologizing to me. She had saved my life, saved my home, and she was apologizing for missing a cleaning interview. I stopped in front of her. I didn't reach into my purse for $5. I reached in for a white envelope. "You didn't need that job, Jessie," I said softly. "I did," she whispered. "I really did. I just wanted a chance." "No," I said, shaking my head. "You didn't need a job cleaning floors. You already had a job. You were my security consultant." I held out the envelope. It was thick. It was heavy. Jessie looked at it, confused. "What is this?" "The insurance company," I explained. "The policy on Arthur's life insurance and the jewelry has a clause. It's called a loss prevention reward. Because you spotted the intruders and because you called me, you saved the insurance company a payout of nearly $500,000. I pressed the envelope into her rough, cold hands. "They usually write a check," I said, "but I told them you prefer cash. There is $5,000 in there, Jessie. And there is a prepaid debit card with another $5,000. Jessie dropped the envelope. She gasped, falling to her knees to pick it up. Her hands were shaking so hard she could barely hold it. Tina, she choked out. I can't. This is too much. I just sent a text. You didn't just send a text, I said, bending down to look her in the eye. You sent a lifeboat. You saw a woman in trouble, and you didn't look away. You could have walked away. You could have ignored it. But you stayed. I placed my hand on her shoulder. That money is enough for an apartment, I said. It's enough for clothes. It's enough to buy a phone that isn't a burner. It's a fresh start, Jessie. It's your turn to be safe. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face, cutting tracks through the grime on her cheeks. Thank you, she sobbed. Thank you. No, I said, pulling her into a hug right there on the street corner. Thank you. I walked home feeling lighter than I had in years. I thought about the irony of it all. For months, I thought I was the one saving Jessie. I thought my $5 and my smile were acts of charity. I was the rich widow. She was the poor beggar. But I was wrong. I wasn't the savior. I was the one who needed saving. We never know in what form our guardian angels will appear. We expect them to come in clouds of glory with white wings. But sometimes they wear worn-out sneakers. Sometimes they smell like old coffee and rain. And sometimes they sit on the corner of 4th and Main, invisible to everyone except the people who take the time to look. My son, my own flesh and blood, became a stranger. And a stranger became my family. So listen to me. Trust your gut. If something feels wrong, it is. Don't let anyone tell you that you are too old, or too emotional, or too confused. Your intuition is your superpower. And never, ever underestimate the power of being kind. You never know when the person you help today will be the one who saves you tomorrow. Narrator tone shifts to warm and inviting. And now, I have a question for you. I want to know where you are in the world right now. What city are you listening from? And what time is it there? Is it morning, or are you listening to this in the quiet of the night? Write it in the comments below. I love reading them. It makes me feel like we are all sitting in my living room together. And if you'd like to help me keep sharing these emotional, thrilling stories every day, consider supporting the channel. Even a small donation makes a big difference. It truly helps keep the channel alive and allows us to tell the stories that matter. For more life stories like this, you can explore the other videos on my channel and subscribe. On the screen, you'll see 2 new stories I'm sure you'll enjoy. Click one and start listening right away. With love,